Story 1. Don't go exploring abandoned hospitals. I haven't had a good night of sleep in 5 years. I can't even forgive myself sometimes for what I did. My name is Danny, and I have a terrifying experience to get off my chest. I always wanted to fit in with my friend group, but no matter what I do, I was always the odd one out. But one thing I had in common with everyone was I am a horror fanatic. That's what got me into the group, at least. See, if I wasn't a big horror fan, I wouldn't be in the group. I didn't have any siblings growing up. I was mainly alone during my childhood while my mother worked long-hour shifts. My love for horror came at a very young age for me, when I was scavenging my mother's closet for something to play with. I stumbled across an old dust-covered box. It was full to the brim of old horror movies. I was hooked seeing all the gore and killing the horror movies portrayed. It made me feel better about my lack of human communication and social status. My friend group consisted of 4, Zara, Hayden, Tammy, and myself. I was the black sheep of the friend group, mainly because I rarely talked to any of them. One day, we sat in the far side of the cafeteria near the corner. Sharing cringe horror was our specialty, especially Tammy. Tammy was the bold one out of our small friend circle. She always wanted to paranormal games like Bloody Mary, the elevator game, and so on and so on. Hayden was the typical prankster and all-around jerk. One time he pranked a kid by inviting her to a fake birthday party. When she eventually found out the party invitation was fake, she tried to stab him, but that's another story for another time. There isn't too much to say about Zara. She barely talks to anyone. She lets her long shaggy brown hair cover her face and ghostly pale skin. She's a genuinely an okay person. Rumors floated around the school of an abandoned mental hospital recently caught fire last night. I wasn't too keen on exploring places, especially abandoned hospitals, but I couldn't say I was scared. Tammy would never let me live it down. Tammy was the first one to address the rumors. She slammed her fist against the table, looking up at us with a big grin on her face. As she pushed her glasses up on her freckled, full face, she spoke in an interested tone. "Guys, have you heard the rumors?" Hayden sat his sprite-kin down and wiped his mouth with his wrist. "What rumors, Tam?" he asked, raising a broader question. Her grin grew bigger and reached in her pocket for her phone. She shoved her phone into Hayden's face and he grabbed her phone to read what was on the screen. I leaned over some to catch a glimpse of what he was reading. His big brawny shoulders nearly blocked the view of the phone. He handed Tammy her phone back and rubbed his face. She looked at us with an excited look and shook in her seat, while trying not to fall out the chair. "After school, we're going to that abandoned hospital," she said with authority as she looked at our reactions. I gave her a weirded out look and started shaking my head no. Wait, let me get this straight. You want us to go to an abandoned hospital for what exactly?" I asked while I turned my body to face hers. "For my YouTube channel, duh. What's with all the questions, Dan? Are you in or out?" she asked with a grin on her face. Hayden and Zara turned to face me and waited for my response. I slowly turned my head back towards Tammy and slowly nodded my head. "Yes. Do you know how many views we're going to get from this video?" she yelled at me while shaking my body around. She leaped up from her chair and grabbed her things. She left a list of everything we would need. I left everything to Zara and Hayden as I left the cafeteria. I walked out the school building and walked over toward the bike rack. I unhooked my bike and started biking back home. As I pedaled home, the abandoned hospital couldn't leave my mind. All I could think about all the germs and diseases in that disgusting place. Looking back at it now, I should have backed out and pretended to be sick. But knowing Hayden and Tammy, they wouldn't let me live it down. As I got to my drive-thru, I got off my bike and walked up to the side of my house and parked my bike on the side of the house. I walked up to my front door and flipped over the welcome mat and grabbed the small bronzed-colored key. As I opened the door, the cold air blasted my face and I walked in. I sat my bag on the ground and walked to the refrigerator. A pink sticky note was left on the refrigerator door. "Working late again, won't be back until 2:30. Love, Mom." I sighed in relief as I was alone home. I walked over toward my computer and signed it and went straight to Google. I searched up the abandoned hospital and read the articles about it. At least over 30 people died there. Horrible experiments were ran on the patients, no proper health care, harsh living conditions, abuse, the list goes on. When the public got wind of what the hospital, they wanted everyone involved dead. The owner, William D. Harris, was put on trial. He bought out the judge and he was hit with a slap on the wrist. Soon after trial, William was found with his body torn to shreds in his own hospital. Ever since the day of his death, the hospital was abandoned and out of use. I turned the computer off and checked my phone. 6:35. My phone screen read back to me. Shit, I'd better start heading my way over there, I said to myself. While digging through the kitchen drawer, I grabbed the flashlight. Before leaving, I walked toward the cabinet and grabbed a pack of fruit snacks before heading out. As I stepped out the house and shutting the door behind me, I grabbed my bike and pedaled toward the back roads. While pedaling toward the location of the abandoned hospital, I checked around me, nothing but big tall trees and forest. As the sky grew dark, the air became thick and dense. The air was heavy. Like bricks were placed onto my chest. As I got toward the entrance to the hospital, everyone was already set and ready. Finally, for a second there we thought you backed out, Tammy cackled as she set up her camcorder. I sat my bike down against a tree and walked over toward Hayden as he dug into his blue bag. "What you looking for?" I asked, glancing at his bag. Hayden grabbed and pulled out a handgun out of his bag. I wasn't a gun person, so I didn't know. He cocked it back and shoved it into his waistband and looked up at me. "Dude, what the actual fuck?" I replied while taking a step back. "Just gotta have it just in case, don't know what sicko could be in there, you know." "There's probably no need for it, dude, Jesus, just don't have it pointed at someone, please," I said with worry in my voice. I slowly backed up from Hayden and slowly walked myself toward Tammy. "Hey, Tam Dash." I was interrupted by Tammy shoving her camcorder into my arms. "Here, you're my cameraman for this video. All you need to do is keep the camera on me and record until we get into the building. Got it?" I slowly nodded at her question, before putting the camera back on her. "Record." Now she pointed both fingers toward me. I pressed the small switch on the camcorder and pointed it toward Tammy's direction. I quickly shot her a quick thumbs up. She got a little closer and stared into the camcorder. "Alright YouTube, it's your girl Tam for Horror, and today we're here at Williams D Mental Hospital. And we are going to play a game of hide and seek." I slowly turned the camcorder toward the decrepit building. The building looked like it went through hell and back. The once scarlet red hospital once was a place for redemption for the unstable turned hellhole. The building was old and run down. The raggedy building stood up on a small hill with old rotting cracked stone steps leading to the hospital. The hospital had eerie feeling to it, like it generated bad aura. I'm not a spiritual person, not in the slightest, but don't you get a gut feeling not to do something, but your mind says yes? I wanted to follow my gut feeling and drop the camcorder and bike it all the way to my house. But I couldn't. We slowly made our way toward the hospital's entrance. The stench from the building was gut-wrenching. The door frames were covered top to bottom in moss and unknown black spots. As we entered the building, the atmosphere changed drastically. The air felt heavier and more thick. It was harder to breathe for me. And with every step we took deeper into the hospital, the damp ground made squish and splash sounds like we were stepping in rain puddles. "Doesn't this look sick, guys?" she yelled out into the spiral steps going up. I turned the camera on the old raggedy steps and used my free hand to shine my flashlight on the rust-covered stairs. "Whoa, this is trippy for it to be an old building. It's still standing when it's rotting from the inside out," I said, facing toward Hayden and Zara. "Alrighty, guys, it's time to play hide and seek. Who's going to go first?" she asked around, looking at everyone in the small circle. Zara slowly raised her hand to volunteer. "I'll go," she muttered softly. Tammy jumped up with excitement and snatched the camera out of my hands and shoved it into Zara's chest. "Count to 50. And if you find us, we have to help you look for the others," Tammy explained to Zara before running down the hall into slight darkness. Zara started her count, and I started running down the opposite hallway from Tammy. Hayden followed Tammy in pursuit. As Zara got to 20, I was a good distance from her. I shined my flashlight against the wall. All the dirt and muck covered the white walls with dirty, dingy flowers. I looked around the hallway and saw 2 doors on each side of the hallway. I opened the door on the right and closed the door behind me, looking around the room. A patient's bed in the far left corner and a cabinet on the far right side of the room. A small stench of mud and must filled the air, and the rug in the room damp with dirt water from recent flooding. As minutes in the somewhat decent-sized room, I heard a light sound of metal dragging against the wall down the hall from the room I was in. I slowly got to my knees to crawl over towards the door to cause less noise. Putting my right eye against the small keyhole, I looked around the best I could. The dragging of metal stopped mere inches away from me. I quickly turned my flashlight off and was consumed by complete darkness. A scraping noise came from the other side of the door, then slowly to the door handle. As the door handle twisted and turned, I quickly ran over toward the bed and slid under it. The door pushed open, 2 big pairs of gray-looking feet walked into the room. It sniffed the dim, dirty air before saying in a deep demonic tone, "I smell you, little one. I just want a bite." I covered my mouth to stop my harsh breathing. The figure slowly turned around and stepped into the hallway, walking down towards where Zara counted. I wanted to leave and run far away from here and go to the comfort of my home. But I couldn't leave them here with that thing roaming around. Coming from under the bed, I slowly crept toward the door and pulled it open slightly. Slowing, walking down the hall, turning my head behind me to watch if the creature tried to sneak up on me. I bumped into something hard and stiff. Raising my head up, I saw Hayden turning around and gave me a confused look. "Dude, watch where you're going," he said, brushing his clothes off. I quickly shot up toward my feet and grabbed his arm and tried to pull him toward the stairs. He pushed me back and grabbed my jacket collar. "Man, what the actual fuck is wrong with you?" he said, tightening his grip. We need to leave this fucking place. I just saw something." I stumbled and stuttered over my words. As I said those words, me and Hayden heard screaming down the hall and multiple footsteps. Tammy and Zara raced down the hallway toward us. Hayden loosened his grip on me and put me down and turned near Tammy and Zara. "What the fuck is wrong with you guys?" Hayden said, annoyed and turning his back toward the hall Tammy and Zara came from. "There's something in here, down there, it's big and grayish," Tammy stuttered. Hayden grew more annoyed and walked down the hallway. Tammy claimed to see the creature. He looked down the hall and turned around to us and threw his hands up. "You all are just paranoid. They're no the dash." Hayden stopped his sentence before pulling the handgun out his waistband and fired 4 shots. A large sickle plunged into Hayden's chest and cut upwards. His blood splattered over the dirt and moss on the walls and dropped to his knees. A tall, crooked-shaped, long twisted arms, the big smile the man had, or whatever you call it, was big, and its sharp teeth pierced its skin. A sickle in one hand and Hayden's decapitated head in the other. The figure twisted itself and opened his jaw, 10 times as wide as any human could, and devoured Hayden's head. The figure set its big round red eyes on us. It licked its weapon covered with Hayden's blood off and walked toward us. "1 bunny down, 3 to go," it said in that same demonic voice. We all ran toward the old rusty steps. In a rush we all tumbled over each other and fell down the steps. Once we all hit the dirty, damp floor, I slowly got up and stood up while helping Tammy up. Zara clenched her right ankle. "Tammy, help me with Zara. Hurry!" I lashed at her, picking her up and throwing her left arm around my neck, Tammy doing the same with her right arm. We quickly made our way through the halls of the hospital in search of the way we came in. The scraping of metal caught our attention as the figure slowly made its way toward us. The smile growing larger on its face, it quickly picked at its pace. We started running with Zara on our shoulders. Tammy somehow tripped and brought Zara down with her. Zara screaming in pain, Tammy quickly got up and tried pulling her up, but I quickly pulled her back as the figure tried to slash at her. Zara tries crawling away before the figure placed its foot on her back and stabbed her to shreds with its sickle. It took a bite out of her cheek and mauled what was left of her face. "2 bunnies down, 2 to go," it said while stepping on Zara's body. Me and Tammy booked it down the hallway. As we ran, the creature screamed, and it screamed loud. Turning the right corner, the front door was in view. As me and Tammy ran toward the door, footsteps came running toward us. With taking a quick glance behind us, 2 extra of those creatures joined up with the original one and chased us, slowly gaining on us. As they gained on us, I slowly started to slow down as I tried to keep up with Tammy. I reached my hands out and grabbed her shoulders and threw her to the ground. She fell into the wall and the footsteps stopped and screaming came from behind me. I turned around for the last time and saw Tammy reaching her arm out for me as the bit and slashed her. I bursted through the door and slammed it behind me. I nearly tripped down the decrepit steps as I rushed toward my bike. I yanked my bike from the tree and started pedaling as fast as I possibly could. I looked over my shoulder and saw the original creature that killed Hayden and Zara. With its free hand, it held up 3 fingers and smiled so hard its face was deforming. I pedaled to my house without stopping for air. I got home and couldn't sleep at all that night or for the next week. I still couldn't process what happened that night. An investigation was launched, but they never found the bodies. It's been 5 years since that night. I even left my hometown, but it hasn't left my mind at all, the way Tammy looked at me while being mauled to death by whatever those things were. Sometimes, I see her in my dreams tormenting me, asking why I did it. I could never give her a straight answer. Story 2. I've been to a mental hospital and they really aren't depicted well in horror. Hi, I didn't know how to start this. So I thought it would be appropriate to start out the way you do at a cancer or AA meeting. It's just in my case this will be about depression. More like suicide. Okay, here goes. Hello, my name is Brendan and I used to suffer from depression. My doctor said it was a moderate depression, but I found that very unlikely when I wanted to kill myself almost every day. The only reason it passed is that was because I said I knew people would miss me if I died. Well duh, I knew they would. It's just that wasn't a good enough motivation for me going on in this world. Reasons for being depressed? Well, our world is kind of a garbage can. It kind of stinks. Being that we're trying to get rid of the negative feelings, I'm not gonna sulk. I'm not all about that anymore. Some might say my depression was brought upon by my early exposure to horror movies and games. I disagree. Those things brighten my day. What doesn't brighten my day is the hick in my sophomore year class telling his friends that he really wants to shoot the gay kid in school. Sorry, no bad language. So, hopefully I got the whole depression thing across because I'm going to tell you about the time I was in the loony bin in sophomore year. It was February, I think. It's been a few years. 2012, I was issued to a hospital after I told my parents that I didn't feel safe about myself. I immediately wanted to leave right when I got there though. People were friendly, nothing bad there. It's just that I had to stay for a week. I missed a choir concert being there. I missed homework and projects being there. The thing that made me hate that place was because it was making my most hated place worse to go back to. Now, this won't be all sobs and moans. There is something else. The thing that was there. The thing that made that place worse than school. The thing is that place wasn't normal. I should probably explain a few more things before I get into that though. I met some people there. Interesting people. Sad ones too. But not insane. Like the 10-year-old. A 10-year-old who actually threatened to kill himself. We'll get to him soon. A girl who was pretty hyperactive. Obviously had ADHD. A girl who didn't talk much. Pretty typical. The heavy girl. Always sad about her looks and weight. And the Christian girl. That was all I knew about her other than she had previous experiences with seizures, but calling her seizure girl seems like something an asshole would write. Speaking of which, I will be naming them by their traits. I'd rather not give away anyone's name in these texts even if I somehow remembered them after 3 years. The names don't stick, but the place sure did. The girls don't even matter too much in this story, I'm telling you. It's that boy. The reason I took so long to write something like this is because I never knew what I wanted to write about. At the time I was writing shitty My Little Pony fanfiction. I wanted to be a writer for so long and only recently did I learn. I'm sighing right now, mind you. You've gotta put in that personal flair. So here goes. Here's the point of this whole thing. I'm gonna tell you my story. Like I said, it was the 10-year-old. He started all of this. I was in bed on my second night there. Really my first day, as I got there when it was night. I was trying to sleep, desperately trying, but failing as I could hear the kid whispering. Talking to someone. I try not to talk to people much. I think that asking someone about the weird thing they do is rude even if they might not find it that way. Hell, they might want to share the experience with me. I just never know. I've never known all my life. So, that night actually passed with nothing much than me falling asleep to the careless whispers of a suicidal 10-year-old. The next morning I ate some pretty good breakfast. Weird thing about those places that I also found out from another friend who went to one is that the food is actually good. They didn't give that whole, they're insane. Who cares about shtick? They really did care for us. They really were nice to us. They really wanted to save us. I wish I'd realized that sooner. Once, when my parents came to visit, I told one of the counselors that I'd rather kill myself than be there. I had a lot of fucked up thoughts. Like, they're forcing me not to kill myself. I hate them, or mercy kills by friends should be legal, and even, people should have the right to harm themselves. All thoughts I don't believe in now, but you know that saying about how you'll look back at your teenage years and wish they burned out of existence? I don't actually feel that way very much. I kept them locked in. Forgot about them. And here they are. How I wish I treated those people the way they treated me. No, it wasn't the people's fault for the horror I experienced. It was that place and that boy. He approached me first about it, the whispering. You want to see them? He asked. I kind of chuckled. Who? He just smiled and asked, you know that camera we got? I nodded. We all were able to share a video camera with each other to record whatever we wanted. Sometimes they'd let us film the bugs outside. Sometimes someone would film us playing in gym off to the side. He said, keep the camera with you when we go to bed. I want to show you something. I was a bit freaked out by this. Funny thing is I liked it. I like weird people, then and even now. I've dated some girls because they're weird. The one I have now is that way too, and I don't see us breaking up anytime soon. Or ever. So I did. I kept that camera all the way till bedtime thanks to an excuse about a coping technique or something. I never remember conversations except for the ones with that kid. I told him I had it and he said to turn it on. He gave me a warning first. He said, don't look yet. I need to tell you something. Whatever you see can't hurt you. I snorted and laid the camera on the bed. He placed his hand on the camera and said, please. I'm showing you this because I can't bear anyone not believing me anymore. I responded with snide, what are you expecting me to see, kid? Jesus, and I thought I was the nicest guy back then. He said back, look, this is gonna be one of those, you won't believe it till you see it, things. And I was too dumb and pretentious to realize how fucking old this kid sounded. Just grab the camera and trust me, was the last thing he said before I picked it up and slapped it to my face. The camera had a night vision mode which seemed to be a thing they weren't intending to have. Just happened to be on a camera that a doctor wanted to quickly snag for a little project here. A little playtime. So it was green. There was a lot of green. Hoop-de-doo, I thought. I know my face showed it too because the kid told me to turn around. I made a slight grunt as I flipped around in bed to suddenly be stopped in my tracks, or my hand and knees in this case. There was something there. Something I didn't want to believe. I couldn't. It's the feeling every horror writer has evoked throughout history. The fantastic, so they call it. In a corner that I could see with both eyes, my right on the green-colored screen and my left on the darkness in front of me, laid a shelf for our clothes and books we had taken here. That's what I saw with my left eye. In the screen was a pair of small white dots. For a second it seemed as if two orbs were just floating in the middle of the screen like a reticule. Then I noticed more things. A shape around the dots. A form that looked human, but broken. Missing hair. Ripped clothes. Scarred skin. I sat there motionless, wordless. Then the kid said into my ear, "He won't hurt you." I was so focused on this that his whisper didn't even spook me. It was morning. I didn't even realize it until one of the nurses told me to come to breakfast. The kid wasn't in my room. I wondered if that whole thing was just some fucked up nightmare. We all got breakfast and some of the girls said I looked awful. Like I hadn't slept. I about had it. I needed to ask the kid if that really happened. I was able to get a spot across from him. I asked, "You have any weird dreams last night?" He was serious this time. Not really the, "Now you know what the problem is. Now we've gotta exterminate it," kind of serious. More like the, "Thank you God someone sees it too," kind of serious. He said, "Thank you." I got hit by something suddenly. There's two kinds of sad people in the world. There's the ones who get hurt emotionally. Who think everything's wrong with the world and don't want to live in it anymore. Then there's the physically depressed. The ones who have a hard life. Who wear their bones every day and get shit on for it. These two just had a little meetup. I like helping people. Oftentimes it ends up just hurting me, but I still do it anyways. "Why do you need, man?" I asked him. "Just," he paused, "believe me. Make me feel like I'm not crazy. Experience it with me." This moment with him was the first step to changing me. Another was meeting my current girlfriend, now fiancée. I felt for people back then, but I was a cynical asshole. I only felt for the pure. He sort of broadened my horizons. So, that night we managed to keep the camera again. For the last time. "Alright, where do I point it?" I asked him. He pointed at the side of my bed. That didn't make me comfortable, not one bit. I never really asked him what these were, but never really stopped in that moment to take the opportunity. I just turned. And there it was. Another person, disheveled, ruined, almost burned looking. Unlike last time I about jumped out of bed. It was staring at me with its hands on my bed like a dog begging for a treat. I did ask this, "Can you talk to it?" He said, "Yeah. It's speaking to me right now." I just barely noticed that the thing's lips were moving. What I didn't notice at all was the worry in the kid's voice until he called my name. "Brendan." "The door." I looked at him and he was pointing at the door out to the hallway that a light cast on as well as on a portion of the floor in our room. There was nothing there and I knew what to do. It's just something made me not want to in that moment. It wasn't the fear I felt with the thing next to my bed. This was dread. This was evil. This was wrong. I slowly motioned the camera towards the door. Slower than to the thing by my bed. It came into view as just a black mass. Like the camera was being messed up. Not showing whatever was there. Then it was a form. A human. A tall, thin, male body with something on its face. It was a crudely drawn smiley face on a piece of paper somehow attached. The ink was smeared and the paper was crumpled. Then there was what was in its hand. A knife. No mistaking it. Big and pointy. Then it stepped forward. We screamed in horror. I threw the camera to the ground and ran into the corner. The kid was with me too and we just panicked until the lights suddenly turned on. It was the nurses. They grabbed us and calmed us. It didn't take me too long to stop panicking, but the kid wouldn't stop screaming. He screamed. And dreamed. And leaved. My misery, Sorry about that. Got a little emotional there. We never talked to each other again even while sleeping in the same room. We went 4 days with complete silence. Trying to avoid each other. I was never on his team in gym. I sat far away from him during lunch. Even doctors and nurses got a bit concerned if we hadn't been so normal while away from each other. There was only one moment when he actually said something to me. It was when I was leaving. The Christian girl and I were being sent home, so they let us say our goodbyes to everyone else. I wanted to let it go. At least have one moment where it's not awkward. Be polite at least. I said goodbye to him. And he said, "He is the bringer of sleep. He will relieve. Make you free from insanity." I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything to him because this isn't a scary story. This isn't me dying in the end on my last word in this biography. This is me overcoming. It may sound cheesy that this is more uplifting than haunting, but this is just venting. This is me saying that there is hope. That the bad things are something you can't see, far off in other places. This is me saying. Live. Story 3. I was a good dad. I tried to fix things. My name's is John Williams. I'm 28 years old. I'm from Scotland. I currently reside in Carstairs Mental Hospital for the criminally insane. I have been here for almost a year after having a psychotic episode. I'll get to why I'm in here later, but I better give you some information about me and my life before this mess. I hope this letter gets out there. I've sent it to enough people and pleaded them to show the world I'm not a monster. I was a hard-working family man. I had a fiancé and a young daughter. I worked every hour God sent to provide for my family. I made a really low wage. I went without the most basic things if it meant my family had what they needed. I don't even think I owned a pair of socks that weren't full of holes. I didn't care though. In my eyes, my purpose was to provide for my family, and that is exactly what I did. My fiancé and I had a very strained relationship. The stresses of being parents and not having enough money and bills constantly incoming, etc. To be honest, we would both probably admit that in the end up we were mostly together for our daughter. We just sort of plodded along in life though. My daughter was my whole world. I looked forward to every single spare minute I had to spend time with her. It was great. Being a dad was what I was best at. It was what I was put on this earth to do. I loved it. Things changed. My wife became distant towards the end. She spent less time in the house. As soon as I would arrive home from work, she would leave dressed to the nines. The telltale signs were all there that she was cheating. Hiding her phone, always out, distant, etc. A few times she told me she was going over to see a particular friend, only for me to turn bump into said friend at the supermarket who knew nothing about her coming over. I actually got a few cheap giggles out of texting her and asking where she was, for her then to lie to me, and I would then tell her I bumped into her friend or whatever. Got a little kick out of the thought of her freaking out, but she ended up carrying on what she was doing, except she stopped hiding it. She knew that I knew. And she knew I didn't care. To be honest, my only worry about us separating was not seeing my daughter every day. Things came to a head one day. I got home from work around 6 p.m. and she was nowhere to be found. My 7-year-old daughter was in the house by herself. That was it. If she wanted to fuck around with whoever, then so be it, but she wasn't about to put my daughter in danger while doing so. I called her and told her to stay at whatever boyfriend's house she was at and not to bother coming home. She showed up late that night drunk and looking a little disheveled. She started shouting and screaming at me about how I'm not a real man and a terrible father as I didn't have money to throw around. I called her a slut, whore, shit mom, amongst other things. Things got really heated. She pushed me. I pushed her back. She grabbed a large knife off of the draining board and lunged at me. I caught her arms and we struggled together. She managed to slash my arms pretty badly, but I would not let go. As I pushed my fiancé away, my daughter screamed in the doorway and "Oh daddy." Too late. My fiancé fell to the ground, but not before smashing her head off the kitchen counter. There was blood everywhere. She wasn't breathing. My daughter ran to her room screaming. I went up after her. I brought her back into the kitchen with me and sat her at the table while I thought of what to do next. Nobody would believe it was self-defense, surely? Cheating wife turns up dead? Partner murdered her, case closed. My daughter knew her mom was dead. She kept telling me through sobs that I broke her heart. Mummy's dead. You killed Mummy. You broke my heart. Repeatedly telling me this. Over and over. I was distraught. My baby girl telling me that I broke her heart. I had to fix this. I done the right thing and I called the police. They found my daughter lying in a pool of blood next to my fiancé in the kitchen. Her chest cut wide open. They found me sitting beside them covered in blood, babbling incoherently, her little heart resting on my lap. It wasn't broken. She lied to me too. Story 4. Embryville State Hospital. Too many people. I feared it would lead to an issue, but on the cusp of a good time I let the matter slide and buried the logical half of my disputing intuition with the promise of chill rooftop talks and alcohol. I mean, I knew the place well, yet the people accompanying me nowhere near thorough enough, a comforting combination really, for no guilt and leaving those I care not about behind to fend for themselves, if such a warranting situation were to arise. I figured I'd use these new acquaintances as merely a social escape anyway, perhaps shoot the shit for a bit, trade adventure stories. I'd feel like a normal outgoing human for the day, maybe sharpen my social skills too. It would be all fun and mind games for me, serving more as a hidden ploy to stimulate my own social sanity at the expense of neurotypical human beings, for what would they know? I met the girl through a Facebook connection. We exchanged a few messages about exploring abandoned buildings and where we had adventured in the past. However, I was very much fatigued with our electronic conversations, dull and typical. It took all my mental strength to conjure up seemingly candid response after response, yet I continued on, merely because she looked pretty. I feared if we met in person her personality would be just as unimaginative as her misspelled message responses. But still I continued to answer because she looked pretty. How juvenile, how low, yes I know. But sometimes a flower is worth watering if only to sever as a floral trophy later. She, from Pennsylvania, had mentioned to me online of her desire to explore the abandoned Embryville State Hospital, not far from her residence in the Keystone State. It's a rather boring asylum, I've concluded, and being I had already explored the campus thoroughly before, I was hesitant to mention to her I'd been there, predicting she'd use my knowledge as a leash to pull me into going back again with her. But she is pretty, and so I told her that I had been there a couple years prior. However, I made sure to express my disapproval of the old hospital buildings. I mentioned they were modern, empty, ugly, and that the Pennsylvania State Troopers operated barracks nearly right on hospital property, slyly establishing a case through context clues that I did not want to go back, without actually physically stating so, as to avoid hurt feelings. I mentioned the claustrophobic tunnels full of mutant mice-sized cave crickets trained to jump at the slightest movement. I made sure to hit on the fact that hallways within a few buildings were alarmed and armed. The slightest motion would trigger the response of the on-site security guards within minutes' notice. I typed out this slew of inaccurate accusations, all quickly assembled as a latch-ditch scare tactic to dissuade her from wanting to go. How could it fail? No problem, she responds back in a message. Sounds like fun, and don't worry about the police. And so, we agreed to meet up on a Sunday sometime within the next few weeks to explore Embryville. I was not at all thrilled with the plan, but I dug myself into such an adventure, and so I have to explore my way out yet again. But hell, she was pretty. Perhaps the hospital would be a bit more decayed, thus photogenic this year around, I thought as I held my doubts. We continued to message each other and talk sporadically online over the course of the following weeks. Ever uninspiring, the conversations continued. Herself too jaded to realize she was killing me with her own predictable small talk. But she did seem super excited to finally see Embryville. It was her dream. She was going to take hundreds of pictures, spend hours inside, she stated over and over. And here in my mind I thought I was fucked. I'm just in it for the adventure mostly, and Embryville is an adventure sort of like how Splenda is sugar, not really so, merely just a substitute for something better to be had. Within the passing days we established a time and nondescript place to meet. When that Sunday arrived, I woke up before the sun to drive hours out to West Chester, Pennsylvania. I arrived mid-morning, approximately 5 minutes late to our designated meeting spot. My vehicle is the only car in the lot. Phone vibrates, she'll be 15 minutes late. My blood boils for a fraction of a second. I hate tardiness. Idle time is always haunting me, it seems, but like a serial murderer, I'm expert at killing it. I step out of my car and decide to check out the pretty wildflowers growing in the field across the street, realizing full well they'll be the most interesting thing I see all day. 10 or so minutes later, a white Ford Explorer pulls into the lot. I recognize her from her online photo. She's driving, but the car is also full with other people. Despite the car radio blaring, I can hear the passengers talking loudly about everything and nothing. She kills the engine and steps out. I wave as I cross back over the street, walking closer to her vehicle. We introduce ourselves as if we've known each other for years. She mentioned she had brought a few friends along and hopes I don't mind. I'm able to utter no more than one syllable about my disapproval of her pals tagging along before her passenger doors swing open. Like a clown car, 3 goons plop out, all rallied up for an adventure I know I'm now stuck babysitting them on. The 3 less than gentlemen introduce themselves quickly, each extending out with a douchey handshake while expressing a smug, shit-eating grin about their faces. All 3 difficult to distinguish from one another, for they're all wearing baggy black clothing and appear as tools one would use to pry open a sewage-jammed manhole cover with. One of the fools is incessantly puffing on an e-cigarette too, looking extra silly. The peach-scented vapor is really beginning to sting my brain. Fortunately, it's not a far walk to the asylum entrance from where we've parked, but mentally I'm already exhausted. I notice the one dude is carrying a small crowbar. I mention to him to leave it in the car, but his immediate response is confrontational. He begins talking loudly and in circles about how he might need it if he gets locked in a room, has to beat up a crackhead, or break out of a padded room, a bunch of idiotic nonsense. Fantastic. Sneaking onto the shuttered, overgrown hospital campus was as effortless as it had been 3 years prior. Within just a few minutes I managed to sneak the goon gang one by one into a tunnel hatch where their rowdy comments were only amplified by the cavernous underground stretch of hollow earth. "Shut the fuck up, bro, we gotta be somewhat quiet from this point on," I yell back to one of the tools. They all hush down for a few minutes, perhaps more stunned at my remark rather than my request for silence. The girl appears unfazed, hanging back and snapping photos. The second we pop into the first abandoned building, they scatter like a hound after a rabbit. I can hear them running around the upper floors, kicking doors open, acting retarded. Still, I'm not worried. I know Embryville is easy, a joke. Not the worst place to be loud and rambunctious within, actually it might be the best. The girl mentions to me she's going to go back down into the steam tunnel system to shoot a few pictures. Myself in no mood to walk back down the stairs, tell her to go ahead and that I'll catch up later. Making my way up to the roof, I gaze over the edge and spot, parked outside, in clear view with windows rolled down, a Pennsylvania State Trooper SUV. Fuck. Here we are, a large group, separated, being noisy as all hell, and oblivious to potential impending doom. I notice the trooper is on his radio, voice inaudible but his mouth is clearly moving. I look over to see the 3 idiots prying loose with the crowbar a concrete slab from the edge of the roof. They're making all sorts of noise too, completely oblivious to the cop parked just below. Desperate to catch their attention, I flare my arms around, but they're all primitive idiots, can't perceive anything outside of themselves. I have no way to communicate with them nor alert them to shut the fuck up. I can tell the 3 are still working at prying the slab off when suddenly a massive piece breaks loose and slides off from the roof edge, smashing into the asphalt below, where it explodes into tiny pieces of cement shrapnel, spraying the windshield of the cop cruiser. The debris quickly settles, followed by a roar of laughter and chanting by the idiots. The officer throws on his sirens and lights but is unable to back up because of the debris field. He yells something threatening over the bullhorn, but it's too amplified to clearly discern. Then, without warning, the remainder of concrete slab dangling over the roof ledge breaks loose and jets toward the ground, this time piercing the roof of the SUV. Immediately the lights and blaring sirens on the vehicle go dead. I can hear the doofuses on the roof now uttering chants of panic. Holy shit, what the fuck, dude you're a fucking idiot, followed by a stampede of running, then silence. I'm stunned, frozen in place, myself beginning to panic. All I can tell is about half of the slab is still jetting out from the roof of the cop car and broken glass outlines the vehicle. I move down to a lower floor window to get a better view of the patrol vehicle, all the while I'm shaking tremendously, my legs jello. The windshield and front passenger side windows of the SUV are completely splattered with blood, so red it's black, forming trails like thick paint slowly dripping down a wall. I don't notice any movement from inside the car. My stomach begins to convulse and I feel the urge to barf. I'm standing completely still, paralyzed, staring out the window at what can only be a murder scene, myself an accomplice. The girl is nowhere to be found, her friend's gone. A few seconds pass by, or was it 10 minutes, 20, an hour? No sense of time. My phone vibrates, a message arrives, hey! Just got service heading out from tunnel now. If you notice a police car outside, that's just my dad, he's a state trooper and wanted to play a joke, don't let my friends know, headed up in a minute.